Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
So what we're doing here is a compressed structural companion to our deep dive. We're using conversations with the absolutely incredible Langston Hughes as our case study. Now, just to be clear, this isn't a summary of the book, and it is definitely not advice. We're here to look at how the systems surrounding an artist can shape their work, how people receive it, and ultimately, our own perception of it all.
And that brings us to a really central question. When we look at the work of a giant like Hughes, what are we actually seeing? Is it just a singular, inspired vision, pure, unadulterated individual genius? Or is it something else? Is it a brilliant strategic response to a very specific set of rules, constraints, and incentives? An output that's been shaped by a system that's kind of invisible to most of us.
Okay, let's really dig into that. To unpack this whole idea, we're going to move through a pretty clear framework. First, we'll define the system itself. Then, we'll look at the rules of the game that it created. After that, we'll introduce a really helpful metaphor, the pressure valve, to see how the system manages dissent. That'll lead us straight into the crisis in perception before we zoom all the way out to see the bigger picture.
All right, first up, the artist and the system. To really wrap our heads around this, we can't just look at Langston Hughes, the person. We have to see the entire world he was working in. So, for our purposes here, the system is this: the whole institutional structure that governed art, race, and what was considered politically legitimate in 20th century America. We're talking publishers, critics, the government, audience expectations, the whole shebang.
And this system, it wasn't just some passive backdrop, right? It was actively creating rules and pressures. So let's take a look at the incentives it cooked up and the outcomes that naturally followed. So what kind of incentives did the system create for an artist like Langston Hughes? Well, the logic was pretty stark. First off, there was constant economic precarity. Just making a living was a huge struggle. Second, you had ideological surveillance, especially for black artists who leaned left politically. And third, there were these powerful expectations from audiences and publishers that basically disciplined what kind of art was seen as acceptable or, sellable.
And just listen how bluntly Hughes lays out the economic reality. He's not trying to be poetic here. He's saying the path to actually making a living as a black writer was almost completely blocked, systematically. This quote just powerfully captures that feeling of being totally shut out and the immense pressure that comes with it.
And the pressure wasn't just about money. Look at this. This is Hughes testifying before Senator Joseph McCarthy's subcommittee in 1953. This wasn't some friendly interview. This was the state looking over his shoulder, sending a crystal clear message to artists about the political lines they better not cross if they knew what was good for them. This is what ideological surveillance looks like.
So when you mix all those intense pressures together, you start to see these predictable outcomes in the kind of art that gets made. If your work was overtly political, it was often just shot down as propaganda. To meet what the market wanted, a lot of stories had to be, sanitized. This forced artists like Hughes to become incredible strategists, using tools like humor and satire to sneak their critiques in. And very often, it meant that the more radical, working-class, black voices got pushed to the sidelines.
So here's the crucial question. If the system is so tight, so restrictive, how does it allow for any kind of dissent to even exist without threatening the whole structure? And that brings us to a really useful way of thinking about it.
Think about the world of art and culture as a giant pressure valve. A smart system knows that you can't just clamp down on everything forever. That pressure has to go somewhere. So it allows for dissent, it allows for critique, but it channels it into forms that let off steam without actually breaking the machine. It's a way of managing dissent. And this quote, oh man, this is the pressure valve in action perfectly. The line, "Let America be America again," is powerful. It sounds patriotic, right? It's a call for reform, not for tearing everything down. But then, bam, that brilliant biting parenthetical, "America never was America to me," delivers the real critique. It's an incredibly potent expression of dissent, but it's packaged in a way the system can handle. And this brings us right to the core idea for this entire explainer, this crisis in perception. The real crisis in how we see things happens when we look at a poem like that, or any piece of art, and we only see the individual genius of Langston Hughes. When we don't see that it's also a masterclass in strategy, an output that's perfectly calibrated to navigate the system he was stuck in. We mistake the art for just a personal feeling and completely miss the architecture of power that shaped it from the start.
Okay, so what if we fix that? If we start to see the system itself, what does that actually show us? What does it reveal?
Well, it reveals how these systems keep themselves going over time, and how they're connected to even bigger forces around the world. It reveals the bigger picture.
You see, these systems aren't an accident. They're self-reinforcing. It's a cycle, a feedback loop. Step 1, publishing markets draw the lines around what topics are acceptable or sellable. Step 2, the prestige networks, the critics, the awards, they reward the art and the artists who play within those lines. And finally, Step 3. State scrutiny comes in as the heavy, punishing anyone who dissents too loudly or too effectively. Each part just locks the others into place.
And what's brilliant here is how this shows that the system shaping Hughes's career wasn't just an American thing. No, it was deeply plugged into global dynamics. His art was being used as a tool in Cold War diplomacy. His career was shaped by the fundamental economics of racial capitalism. And his work was in constant conversation with anti-colonial and liberation movements happening all over the planet. You really can't understand one piece without seeing the others.
And look, understanding all of these constraints, it doesn't diminish Hughes's genius one bit. If anything, it does the exact opposite. It highlights his incredible strategic brilliance, his ability to navigate a deeply restrictive world and still create art that speaks to us with so much power today.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.